What's up guys, and welcome to this video. This video is a full review of this monitor right here, which is the AOC G2460PG. Now this is a gaming monitor that's aimed at Nvidia gamers with an Nvidia graphics card, and this is because it has G-Sync as well as a 144Hz refresh rate and 1 millisecond response time. This is all in a 24-inch 1080p based package. So it's a gaming monitor, but is it a gaming monitor that you should be buying? So the first thing you're going to want to do is get this out of the box and assemble it. And this is incredibly easy. All you need to do is get the stand and attach the stand to the base. And then you've kind of got the complete stand-base combo. And this actually just attaches to the monitor with 4 screws. So as long as you've got a screwdriver to hand, this is incredibly easy to do. To be honest, most monitors these days are incredibly easy to assemble, and it's not something you should have to worry about. But if you want to, you can actually use a third-party stand with this monitor. It does have the VESA compatible standard, so this means that you might want to attach it to something like a dual or triple monitor mount, or just a second stand if you don't like the one it comes with. I did most of my testing with a dual monitor stand, so I did use the VESA mount and I didn't have any problems doing this whatsoever. Now once you've got this thing set up, you can tell that it's very well built and it does look good as well. The base itself, it has a nice sort of circular disc, so if you want to move it, then you're not really going to notice that it's out of alignment. It's not like one of those ones where you've got an arrow-like shape and you point it to the left. You can tell that it's not actually pointing the right direction, or at least the direction the manufacturers want you to direct it. So a circular base I think is pretty good. The whole thing is pretty stable. It's got a nice finish to it, even though it is a plastic finish. It feels nice and sturdy, and it doesn't wobble too much if you actually move your monitor about, which is of course one of the things you're looking for when you're spending this much money on a monitor. Because this is a G-Sync monitor, you only have one DisplayPort input. This is something bad that you can say about all of the G-Sync monitors. They all have just one solidary DisplayPort. This is because you need to use DisplayPort to get the G-Sync functionality, but maybe you're someone that wants to have a monitor that can use a PlayStation or an Xbox as well as your PC. And this is where sadly you are going to miss out on some of that functionality that you won't get with a G-Sync monitor. But this isn't an issue, and for the majority of people, the sort of people this is aimed at, this won't be a problem at all. Now the cable that it comes with, the power cable it comes with, has a power brick, and normally this wouldn't bother me, but I had to say that actually the cable from the power brick to the monitor was actually way too short for my liking, and it meant that I have to have it hanging from below my desk, so it's about halfway off the floor. It's not a big deal, but it's not something I like to see, and so my one criticism of the overall design and things like that would be that next time AOC, could you make that cable a little bit longer? You can have the power cable bit a bit shorter, I don't mind that, but I don't want the power brick to have to be hanging from my desk. As for what you can do with the stand, it has a sort of swivel. It does move a little bit about the base when you do this. It's not as good as some others I've tested. Shouldn't be an issue, but it's slightly disappointing. But it's got pretty much everything else you need. It goes up and down, it tilts up and down as well. And it can actually pivot as well, and if you want it to turn 90 degrees, you can do that. And this is actually very easy to do. It's easier than some of the other monitors that I've used because it doesn't clip the bottom of the base. If you've got it all the way at the top, you don't have to kind of be pivoting it like that. You can literally just straight up twist it and it will go without any problems. It is a TN panel, so the viewing angles when you're using it in that 90-degree orientation won't be as good as if you're using it in the standard 0-degree position. So that's the hardware bit, but what about the monitor itself? Well, setting it up with the on-screen display was good initially because it's got buttons underneath, which means that it's pretty easy to do and get around what you want with a bit of feedback. Some of the Philips ones I've used have no sort of feedback at all. They're touch sensitive and you don't get any tactile feedback. This means that it's not very easy to navigate. But unfortunately this monitor was the flip side of that, whereas it had good buttons, but then the OSD was kind of displayed in a weird way. I couldn't actually find all the options I wanted to easily, and it didn't look very good. It wasn't that easy to navigate. But you only have to do this once, you only have to set it up once, so it's not a big deal. You've got plenty of options in that menu. You've got stuff like overdrive, and then your standard brightness, contrast, gamma, and things like that. So setting it up is more than doable. It just needs a slightly bit more polish to be a perfect OSD, which not many of the monitor's OSDs are. One of the unique features about G-Sync monitors is that they also come with this ultra low motion blur technology, which means that you get ultra low motion blur. So if you're running at something like 120 Hz, then things appear even smoother than they would normally. I believe the backlight kind of pulses similar to the way Light Boost did if you were following 3D technology, which means that everything is super smooth and you don't get any sort of blur from your images. And while this works, it doesn't work with G-Sync, and it does dim the display considerably to the point where I don't really consider using it. So some people might be okay with this. If you're working in a low light environment, then it's not going to be a big deal, but it's not something I actually used really throughout my testing. It works, but the cost of lack of G-Sync and the fact that the brightness goes too low is kind of a no sell for me. I don't use it. But now we're all set up, what is this thing like to use? Well, it is a TN panel, it's 1080p, so on paper, doesn't sound that good. But as soon as you mention G-Sync and the fact that it's 144 Hz, things get a lot more interesting. Combine that with the fact that this is actually one of the cheapest G-Sync monitors you can buy, things do look very interesting. And sure enough, like a normal TN high refresh rate monitor, the colours and stuff are okay. For a TN panel, they're pretty good, and anyone that isn't doing any serious colour work will not have an issue with the colours on this monitor. Blacks aren't as good as I am used to, but then again I am used to VA and IPS panels, so as a TN panel that again kind of makes sense. So generally speaking, the image quality is good. It's not great, it's not bad, it's pretty good, and it's pretty good for a TN panel. But gamers aren't really someone that's super critical about colours, because of course we get the benefits of having a higher refresh rate in G-Sync with this monitor, and that's where things really do start to shine. Using the high refresh rate just generally in the desktop is great. I've been used to it for a few years now, and it really does make a big difference. Everything is super smooth, and even if you're just browsing the web, things are great. Like I say, if you're going to be doing some colour work and something like Adobe Lightroom, you're not really going to be getting any sort of benefit of spending a lot of money on a monitor other than the high refresh rate, because the colours are still that of a TN and aren't really going to accurately reflect the colours that you've taken with your camera or whatever sort of application you're using, reflecting the colours properly. But of course, we want to talk about gaming. This is a gaming G-Sync monitor, so what's it like to game on? Well, the first thing you need to do to get set up for gaming is enable G-Sync. This is super easy. You get a little balloon will come up in the bottom right hand side of your screen when you log on saying you've got a G-Sync monitor, would you like to set up G-Sync? Of course you click yes, and then you just need to tick the box and click apply that says enable G-Sync, and you are away and ready to go. It does pretty much everything else for you. The only thing to note is that this will only work in full screen mode and will not work in borderless window. So if you're someone that really likes having a borderless window open, you are out of luck. But that aside, G-Sync is great. You can find out a little bit more about it and how it works in a separate video, which I will overlay here, and I will actually put in the description for you as well. Now G-Sync is great because it means you don't get any stutter or tearing that you normally would get from enabling or disabling G-Sync. But just to summarize, it's not going to save you from every sort of bad coding that you get from a game. If an explosion goes off and you were at 100 frames a second and you drop to 30, you are going to notice it, make no mistake. But G-Sync is great because you don't get any stutter or tearing that you normally would by using or not using G-Sync. The first game I booted up was Battlefield Hardline, EA's latest shooter, which you can actually find the review of that in the description below. Now Battlefield Hardline is a great example of some good coding. Everything is super smooth, and if you do get a slight drop in frame rate, it is just that, a slight drop in frame rate. And literally with G-Sync I do not notice. I don't know what my frame rate has been. I managed it at the first sort of 10 minutes of the game and it was hovering around about 100 to 115 frames a second. Turned off the frame rate counter, have not looked back since. It is literally the smoothest experience you can get from a game. You don't have any stutter, you don't have any tearing in this game. It is literally brilliant. And paired with the GTX 980, it looks brilliant. I have to say, it was just a real pleasure playing this game on this monitor. This monitor delivered. And I've said this before about Battlefield 4 on the Philips 27-inch G-Sync monitor that I've used, but because this is a smaller screen, everything just looks that little bit better. Yes, it is obviously a smaller screen, but the pixel density is slightly higher than you would get on a 27-inch monitor. I think 27-inch is pushing it in terms of 1080p, but for a 24-inch monitor it's absolutely fine. And of course you get the benefits of having a higher frame rate rather than running something like 4K or 1440p. So that's Battlefield Hardline. It's a great experience. I really enjoyed it, and I think it is easier to be a better player. I'm not saying I'm any good, but it's easier to be a better player. Now the next game I booted up was Ryse Son of Rome. Now this game is good because it's pretty demanding, it looks good, and it does push what you can do at 1080p. I was hovering around 45, 55 frames a second, and again, no tearing whatsoever, didn't feel any stutter at all. I was playing this with a controller, so it kind of doesn't require such a high frame rate, whereas if you're using a mouse it is more noticeable. But literally the experience is brilliant. It's not exactly the best game in terms of innovation or anything like that, but it is a bit more enjoyable when you've got G-Sync because everything makes it that much smoother, and this monitor did deliver on providing it just a good experience. I couldn't really ask for any more. Now the final game I tested was Grid Autosport. Like Ryse, I use a controller for this, except this time the frame rate was hovering around an average of about 85 frames a second, and this was at ultra settings. And here's the thing with G-Sync, and everyone will say it's super smooth and it's tear-free, but the thing is, it's just mesmerising to be able to look at a screen and not have anything wrong with it. I've been using a 4K TV for some of the gaming I've been doing, and while obviously things visually look amazing, the stutter and the tearing that you sometimes get does take you out of that experience. Whereas something like a G-Sync monitor, like the one, well, of course, we're testing here, just although it's not 4K and it doesn't have all these bells and whistles, it's just so good to be able to sit down and just focus on your game and not have any distractions. One of the good things about console gaming is that if it's well done, you get a nice capped 30 or 60 frames a second, and you don't have to worry about anything. And with G-Sync, it's that experience. You don't have to worry anything. You don't have to worry about anything. It's just so nice to be able to play a game and just be able to focus on the game. And literally this monitor delivered such a good experience, it is pretty unbelievable. So then that does actually bring us to the end of this review. And you've probably noticed I've been quite positive about the gaming experience. This is because, simply put, at the moment of all the monitors I've ever used, I would not rather have any other 1080p monitor. This is the 1080p monitor I want for gaming full time. It literally is that good. Couple that with, actually, I believe it's the cheapest G-Sync monitor you can buy. I've seen it for under $400 and under £300. And literally, if you're considering it, even slightly, go for it. This is a fantastic monitor. I can imagine having 3 of these and 3D surround would be pretty cool as well. But for a gaming monitor, it does everything it says on the tin and more. It looks good. I mean, the actual thing looks good. Everything you see on the screen looks pretty damn good as well, of course, for a TN panel. Everything feels really good, whether it's just on the desktop or whether it's the games you're playing, and everything just has no artifacting of any sort, so no stutter and no tearing. And for £300, I think that's great. I think that's brilliant value. And this is actually the first video that I am going to start bringing in the PC Centric Awards, and I'll bring you more on what they mean in the next week or so. But this actually gets my top buy badge. This literally is a top buy. I don't think there's any other monitor in the 1080p range for Nvidia gamers that is a better option than this. Please, if you're interested in it, go and get it. It is thoroughly worth it. And I'm really sad to be giving it back. I've said that before about other monitors, but of all the monitors I've tested in the last few weeks, this is my favourite. This is the one I would love to keep. Sadly not. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions about this, any monitors, anything at all, hit me up at PC Centric. If you have anything to say about this particular video, leave it in the comment section below. For more videos like this, of course, subscribe to PC Centric. You can find the subscribe button. Is it there? It used to be there. I don't know. It's somewhere. Just hit the subscribe button, and obviously give this video a like if you liked it, and dislike it if you don't like it for whatever reason. So yeah, that is pretty much my summary of this G-Sync monitor. AMD users, you do of course have FreeSync coming out, and I'll hopefully be able to take a look at that in the next coming months. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.